Alright, in this video, the last video, in section P9, we're going to talk about the absolute value and absolute value inequalities. So first of all, I want to begin with a refresher. So what does this absolute value sign mean? It means the distance that x is from 0. So for example, if I have 0 here, then the distance refers to a space away from 0. So if I go out here and call this distance x, I've gone out to x. But then remember, distance does not take into account direction, so I could actually have another space out here that is a distance x and also be at minus x. Okay, so for example, if I have x is equal to minus 4, that means from 0 I go out 4 units and I'm out here. But I could also be out here at minus 4. In other words, this is saying that x is either 4 or, and specifically use the word or, x is equal to minus 4. Okay, and so then really to drive this point home, now we're saying that the distance that this quantity is from 0 is 4 units. So what that is saying is essentially replace x that was up here by 3x minus 2. So this is saying either we have 3 minus 2x is equal to 4, or 3x or 3 minus 2x is equal to minus 4. And then you can go ahead and solve this, and let's see, what do I get here? X is minus, oh goodness, minus 1 half. And then over here, I'd get x is positive 7 halves. Okay, so again, just going through that algebra. And so here what we would say is the solution set is minus 1 half and 7 halves. Okay, done. Now we're going to change it a little bit. So now I have absolute value less than 4. Well, how do I read this? This means that the distance that x is from 0 is less than 4 units. So on a number line, let me get one out here quick. On a number line, so here's 0, that if it's a distance less than 4 units, so here's 4, and here's minus 4, x is somewhere in between here. We don't know. So really what this is saying is that this is equivalent to saying that we are in the interval -4 to 4. Okay, and again, you'd have circles here. Alright, so, and again, representing this, we would say that -4 is less than x is less than 4. So you get a compound inequality when you have a less than sign. Now, in this case, how do we read this? That we're saying that the distance that x is from 0 is more than 4 units. So again, this is more or less what I said. And if we look at a number line now, this is a completely different case. So in this case, here's 0, here's 4, here's -4. What we're saying is, okay, we have open circles at 4 and -4. If the distance is more than 4 units, it's actually out here. So it goes this way and this way. And from this case, we end up getting either x is more than 4, which is this case over here, so I'll move that, or we get x is less than -4. So, and remember, we get the word or in between. So really what we're saying is that it's minus infinity to 4 union, or minus 4, sorry, and then union 4 to infinity is where x is in. Okay, so let's look at an example, and then so really what we're saying here is we have three different cases. So we try and, or this is the process rather, on how we work with absolute value inequalities. So we try and get the absolute value to one side. Okay, and then look at the form that it's in. If the other side of the absolute value is less than 0, then there's no solution. If it's greater than or equal to 0, then you try and make an absolute value inequality, or either you make a compound inequality. So again, you can make a compound inequality like this, or do it like this, depending on the sign that you have. So for example, let's work through this problem. I have negative 10 less than negative 5 absolute value of 2x minus 1. So again, first thing I do is divide by 5. Okay, divide by 5, I get 2 greater than or equal to, okay, minus 2x minus 1 in absolute values. And now, which form is this in? Well, let me actually rewrite this. So I have the absolute value of 2x minus 1, and I have 2, and then the sign is opening up towards minus 2. Okay, now I can figure out which form I'm in. Well, let's see, I'm in, that's what's happening, so let's see, definitely c is greater than 0, and I'm in this case, so I go to this form. So I end up with minus 2 less than or equal to 2x minus 1 less than or equal to 2. Okay, and I go ahead and solve this, and I get minus 1 less than or equal to 2x less than or equal to 3 by adding 1 to both to all three parts. And then lastly, I divide, and I get that x is between negative 1/2 and 3/2. Okay, so on a number line again, if the number line helps you, great. Don't feel compelled to do it. Okay, here's my number line. That's crooked. That's okay. Let's see, and then I have 0, and I have minus 1/2, and I get 3/2. That's supposed to be a 2. Okay, and I have closed dots. Okay, and x is between them, right? So this is what's happening. So I should say at the end that the solution set is bracket, now since we have equality, minus 1/2 comma 3/2. Alright, and then I'm done with the problem. So what did I do here? Well, in this video we talked about the absolute value being that it represents the distance that the quantity inside, x in this case, so x is the quantity inside, means that, or being the distance from 0. Okay, we went through and did a couple examples, and then we talked about inequalities with absolute values. And then finally, we talked through the process rather quickly about how to determine the absolute value, or solve the absolute value inequality. And so the biggest step here is we can start doing the algebra, but then if the algebra doesn't look like our form that we want, so if it doesn't look like either of these, and I'm looking specifically at this statement, what I did is I rewrote it so that it does. So I have the absolute value on the left-hand side, and then the other value on the other side, and then I had to figure out, well, what sign goes in between. And I noticed here that it opened up towards 2, which is why I have the less than opening, or the sign less than or equal to, so that it opens up to 2. And then after this, I broke it into the form, the corresponding form, and solved it. Okay. Now remember that with or, in this case here, you're actually going to get a union. Okay, or actually translates with sets into a union. So you're going to have two intervals, and just keep that in mind. All right. And that, everybody, is the last section or the last video of P9 and the last video for Math 1090.